the invitation is to shift this relationship from shifting from the consumer to this co-creation, like rather than seeing the flower, what can you give me, it's a whole different question. I think there's an invitation of how we're showing up in every moment as we relate.
You're listening to the Mana Mama podcast, one of the broadcast channels for the Mana movement, a global and grassroots initiative at re-educating humanity in all things love, evolution, truth, freedom, beauty, and the natural order of things. If you're new to Mana, jump on our website and have a thorough look at our offerings, our in-person and online coursework that is blowing people's minds and creating incredibly swift and positive changes in individuals, relationships, and families. In the pipeline for early 2025, new on-demand coursework is on its way. Perfect introductions into what we're doing. Our next in-person events are in April. In Ireland, we have our 3-night Vibe Weekender with very special guest Christian Calero Diaz, 11th generation medicine man of the high Andes. May 22 to 28, we have our 7-day humanity gathering in Montana, USA, and another one in Ireland, June 6 to 12. Then June 20 to 28, the Zora Women's Sailing Conference is setting sail on the Adriatic Sea in Croatia with 5 incredible female leaders at the helm, discussing and inspiring into the themes of cultural, spiritual, and societal sustainability. All of these events and courses are outlined at our website, www.themanamovement.org. Sign up for our newsletter there and be the first to find out about early bird discounts and free offerings. But for now, lean back and get ready to harvest some soul gems with our first guest back on the podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Mana Mama podcast, and today's guest is the wonderful Malika Avani, known as the Rhythmic Mystic. Malika elevates the visions and frequency of modern leaders of our time through drum mentorship, working specifically with sacred sites around the world, and her life-changing experience, such as her program, The Healing Drum, which has been running 7 years now. Malika's initiation journey has spanned 14 years and has taken her as a pilgrim and medicine woman through more than 30 countries. Malika is truly an unsung medicine woman whose innate gifts, love, and devotion to the collective activates people's inner knowing and purpose in life. So, Malika, welcome to the podcast. It's so lovely to have you here.
It's so good to be here. It's so good. Thank you for having me here. Absolutely.
Oh, it's a pleasure, darling. I was thinking the other day, I can't remember exactly if it was 2013 or 12 or 14, or I think it was 2013 we met in Peru, but our paths have crossed at really powerful times for both of us, and then distanced, as we go our individual ways for years and years, and then come back in. And throughout that, I just have such a deep respect for you and your walk and your humility and your incredible dedication to, your gifts and sharing them with humanity, and yeah, especially the work you do, with Pachamama herself. Like, I hope we get into that in this conversation, but I just have so much respect for you. So you're such a welcome guest here, my sister. Really lovely to have you here. Yeah.
Oh, Chrissie, it's such a journey to also witness, how this has unfolded. I think it's been a decade of all the different seasons that we've gone through, and our very vulnerable embodiment of what that is to be in leadership in all the different times. So I am absolutely in awe and deeply moved to be here in these times. Again, in this interwovenness of just a whole body. Yes, it is so different to be in the field with your leadership. It moves me in a whole other way. There is just such a clarity in the momentum and the direction. And that is what I feel the past couple of days of just setting this up was like, wow, look at how I am moving towards this podcast. It's just been this big force, big vision, and the importance of leaning into this sisterhood and allyship and deepening our reverence of what's up ahead and the challenges as well as the blessings that's coming our way. So such a
Mm.
blessing to be here in meeting the community in this way. I am so excited for our conversation.
Oh, beautiful. Oh gosh, it's going to be beautiful. I can tell. I don't know. I'd love to introduce you more. I mean, like you are really an out and out medicine woman, and a lot of people throw that term around. They really bandy that around these days, don't they? Chucking it around and look, yes, everyone has a medicine, but then there's medicine women and there's medicine women, and there's the ones that work humbly and it's not about the gram, and who are literally on major pilgrimages that no one will ever know about to to harmonize energetics on a global scale and within individuals. And I just find it so fascinating because I feel like me, we didn't necessarily have a lot of nurturing from our ancestors into with our gifts in this field, and so having to kind of um, educate ourselves and find our own teachers and walk that path of dedication is it's just been incredible, especially since like we get conditioned to come into mainstream lifestyles or come through that with our families and then break away. And
Mm.
I think that breaking away from whether that's mainstream for some people or whether that's just a past way of being that isn't serving us anymore, is limited, it's not filling us up. Like I'm quite passionate about that, and I know you've done that in such a big way in your life, like really had the courage to break away, and walk a very unique life. So can you tell us more about that? Because you, in fact, however long ago you were in media, weren't you, in TV and stuff? And a lot of people listening are in industries that they may have been in for a while, but are wanting to move towards something more soul led. So, can you tell us about how that was for you?
Yeah, that was in 2010, and it was a whisper that became a very loud voice of there is so much more. I mean, it was coming into my turning 28 and starting to kind of drift off into these other spaces. I just started to wonder of imagination. I wanted to travel so much. I had a beautiful opportunity to study overseas in Australia, and that kind of opened up my world. And ever since then, there was a beautiful seed that was planted when I was in uni about like indigenous cinema and the way that we tell the story. I'm just so fascinated about storytelling and discovering new ways of living and being, so that whisper became louder, and the breaking away was something about there was just a clarity in my being that I didn't want to fit in that box that of the life that was being presented to me. And it wasn't easy because there wasn't anyone else that I knew that was paving the way. And as you mentioned about having very clear lineage or teachers passing down in that way and seeking for this being midwife or being going into apprenticeship in that way. And so that journey of breaking away was also letting go of many comforts. It was like selling off a lot of the things that I had. It was so instinctive and yet very clear, and there was no turning back for me in a way. And it was profound because when I look back at the younger version of me, I was like, my gosh, like I just went for it, right? There was just this uh, thirst, as you mentioned. There's so many of us in this crucial moment of realizing that we are honing the skills that we have mastered or cultivated within the system, and now there is a way for us to apply the skills that we have cultivated into something that would also fulfill our soul profoundly. And how can we begin in that journey of moving into this other way of being, of a lifestyle that truly supports our purpose, our passion, as well as an internal rhythm that allows the artistry to come through, that allows also the listening to come through, so that whisper became louder, and it was just a matter of listening even deeper and bringing my ears down to the ground of how it unfolded from every step that I took into the unknown.
Right. Okay, that's the manual, ladies and gentlemen, and the highlighted piece of that was ears to the ground. That just nailed it. Literally, when you said those words, I saw you, with your face and ear right down onto the soil of Pachamama, ears to the ground, and this idea of listening deeper, which we've talked about before, is obviously such a major part of finding that soul path that is calling all of us. It's certainly got something to do, a lot to do with a deeper listening. Like there's so much distraction, isn't there? Or not necessarily distraction, but things that shiny things that we can, without a lot of discipline, can keep choosing to put our attention on. It is up to us, obviously, what we put our attention on, but it takes quite a lot of courage, doesn't it, to sort of create some space to
Mhm.
deeply listen. How was that part for you? Like, if we could just hone in on that listening part for you at that
Mm.
time in your life, what did that look like?
In the beginning, I mean, I was raised in a city. Although my grandparents, we had an opportunity to be in the village and grew up with horses. So in that way, that was kind of my opportunity to be in nature and be with nature. And the rest of my life, it seems, this journey has been this remembrance of feeling this sense of home, in the vibration and the frequency in which home feels like. And that was really marking the way that I was attracted to different spaces and the way that I was listening. And within the modern growing up, and being exposed to a lot of marketing and pop culture, and what it was to be raised in in a small city, and having such a shift of exposure to like fast food, all that was. And there was one time I remembered this when I was 15. There was a nature camp, and it was, I think, the first time that I actually didn't have any appliances on. Like there was no radio on, there was no TV on, and
Mm,
all I heard was like the crickets and nature, and that it terrified me. I was like, whoa, this is something that I've
mm,
never experienced before. And yet
mm,
there was like this leaning into what's there, because it's almost like all this noise and the many voices started to come in louder, and giving space for it eventually kind of grew into a very clear voice of guidance, of inner knowing. And it was a journey of forgetting, kind of shedding the many layers of what I thought I was, or what my society or my friends or my family members wanted me to be. And it was just the journey of wanting to discover who I was outside of the perimeter, or the consensus of what it is to belong in this intricate web of what society say is acceptable and what's not acceptable. So that call was so profound, and the more that I was brave enough to listen to all the different noise, it became clearer and clearer for me that it became this inner knowing and inner guidance that guided me through 30 countries and brought me to places and meeting incredible people from this profound listening.
Absolutely fascinating. And yes, it is the space to hear, because our calling is inside of us, isn't it? Like what we are here to create, it's inside of us. It's not outside of us. And a lot of people do search outside of themselves for signs, about what they should do next, what will fill them up. But really, it is about listening to what's already there and creating some space for that. And yeah, it seems like you have done that beautifully, and you continue to do that beautifully. So much so, you remind me a bit of my late teacher, Malika, Liz Gilbert Grant, who had learnt to trust that listening so much that she would receive, an intuition or inspiration even, I've got to go to Ireland, or I've got to go to Scotland. And she'd have no concept about what that would be about, but would trust it completely. Just the feeling that came through, and would, be on a plane very swiftly after, with no idea what she was going over for, but just following that. And of course, huge magic would unfold. And you live like that, don't you? You've
Mm-hmm.
had a lot of calling to move around the planet to different places, and you found, a lot of very purposeful work open up for you with that listening. Can you share with us a little bit about that?
Thank you. I can, like I can feel the presence of your teacher here together with us and all the other women who have paved the way for us to really continue this work, because I feel like this is the remembrance that we're just in continuation of a walk or a path that's really kind of set for us. And this was a profound remembrance for me because in 2016, I had a profound vision when I was drumming when I was in Thailand. And it was one of those times in my life was like this. There was just such a clear calling because I didn't know I was receiving this vision. And this was the vision of a powwow, this beautiful dance of the Lakota people around the fire while I was drumming. And I said, why am I receiving this vision? And that's when, the information or the prayer of Standing Rock started to come
Mm.
to me. And there was just a profound call in my soul that I needed to be there, wanted to be there. And it was just a series of one event and unfolding in a miraculous way. It's like if you're meant to be there, you will be there, you will arrive. And Creator made sure that me and my then partner arrived and on that sacred land with almost nothing to our name. We along the way had been stolen from, we didn't have anything, and it was just a matter of that testimony. And I cried when I arrived on that land. It was just like there was a road that leads to the fire, and there was all these flags of different nations, and I was just so moved of this profound remembrance within my soul of why I have always been attracted to this culture or the drum or the songs, because there was something profound in my soul that I always remembered. And so i- that moment was etched in my soul also because I received my second drum on that land. I received a buffalo drum. And I was so moved by that manifestation or that act. That was how the healing drum was birthed, because I saw what it was to be a knowledge keeper, wisdom within the landscape of the plains, because it's not easy weather. It is strong wind. It's cold. I deeply understood that embodiment of carrying the drum and bringing the drum and what that means to bring the message. So that was in 2016. And there were a series of, I call them like assignment of vision that comes, whether it's being called back to Peru and it will be very clear in the dream, we'll be like, we're waiting for you to come back. And it's almost like straight away you kind of pack up your life and you go and you don't know and you surrender and see what unfolds. And a lot of times it's not a path that is to be understood by anyone else. It is as mysterious even to myself. I don't know, I don't need to know. And it's that surrendering. And at times it's, as you mentioned, to walk the medicine path is also accepting that the medicine is bitter, right? So in order for it to fully work is also realizing to authentically walk our path. At times we have to be, play the villain in someone else's story to deliver the teachings, and being able
Mhm.
to hold that with authenticity and integrity in these times and truly walk the talk is wow. I don't even know how to, yeah, explain it. So it's really an honor. It's not something that I would say is for everybody to walk, the medicine path. And yet it is so mine, ours, to walk and pave a way and model this integrity, humility, and selfless service to our community.
Absolutely. And I love what you said about, it being it's just so unique. It's for you. I mean, it's obviously for everyone, but the trials, the challenges, the rituals, the messa, the light team that you're working with, that's for you. It's for us. It's it's something that's so incredibly delicate and personal. And yeah, it's good always to have, guidance, and we need our teachers. But in the end, we have to make our own mistakes. We have to forge our own way through and build our own strength from our own experiences. And it is experience that shapes us. And when we look out at modern society, human beings are sort of having a very limited, you know, um, let's say, choice of kinds of experiences. Like people, kind of going through their days and weeks and months doing the same kinds of things. We talk about this in the humanity training a bit relative to true heart led decisions. Where people aren't really deciding on anything. They're sort of just automatically getting up and eating the same kind of breakfast, going to the job they don't really want to go to, not really like tuning in, going, oh, come on, like, what am I all about? Where am I going next? And deciding from within, from that place. And yeah, I sense that that's what everyone would really love to do. I don't think anyone would opt for, oh no, I really would prefer to go through my life and not have these experiences that nourish my soul, so much. I think everyone wants that, but it is, the courage to break away, like I was saying earlier, to listen and to forge that path. It's so worthwhile, though, isn't it? It's so incredibly worthwhile. Like we know that our race is missing kind of a depth of soul, or an expression of soul, or a nourishment
Mhm.
of soul. We're kind of feeding our bodies and feeding our minds a whole bunch of junk, generally. But the soul is so hungry in most people, wouldn't you say?
Oh, I completely agree with you, Chrissy. It's so beautiful to also begin to welcome this evolutionary journey that we're in humanity. wow, with every thread, it's actually bringing us into such deeper remembering. I think more than anything, as you mentioned, that it is really inside of us. It is realizing that we were already born with it, and realizing what false myth or stories that we have kind of taken on in order to be accepted by our clan, in order to be accepted by our family, in order to be a part of this societal construct, right? I think this is what is unfolding in the bigger story, or the bigger picture, in this human narrative of what do we want to write together, in realizing that we do have this capacity to connect with each other so profoundly. And I think this is the hunger that you talk about, to first return back to the body, to this very vessel that we've been given. And the technology that this body has is something that I've observed in a lot of the modern people. They've almost kind of segregated themselves. They've been so used and told again and again and again that they need to steal from themselves, to extract from themselves in order to meet a sense of recognition, to be set as successful, to be celebrated. And the journey, I feel like a lot of us that are awakening and more into our own power, our capacity to write a new story for humanity, a healthier story for humanity, is this journey of beginning to occupy this body. Because when we're not in our body, something else is in our body, so especially for the women, for the sisters who's listening to this podcast, it's the beautiful journey of journeying from our heart to our throat, to the heart, to the womb, and expressing what we really want to express, and start to feel every part of this beautiful vessel. That in itself is a journey of truly returning to the very love that we were made of, this abundant infinite source, and just connecting back to this intelligence, this body technology that we already have. And we get caught up with all the other outside technology that we don't get to really realize that it's already in us. And how can we honor that intelligence, right? The capacity to truly feel the power of this vessel.
Yes, yes, and essentially that technology of the body, is an inherent part of the nature of a human being and what makes us human, as opposed to what makes us oak tree or makes us chimpanzee. The human body uh, is one of those ways, like you said, of like connecting in and being embodied, actually, and understanding and exploring and mastering bit by bit the technology that we have here. That is a direct route to like a fulfillment of soul, because
Mhm.
I think the fulfillment of soul, it is inextricably linked to our connection to nature itself. And when I say nature, I don't just mean nature outside of ourselves, I mean our nature.
Mhm.
Like I look around and feel around, and I see that my brothers and sisters in the human family that have this depth of soul, and their lives are radiant and multicolored, and the light shines from their eyes, and they'd be happy to die tomorrow because they've already experienced and received so many blessings they can't even count them. Like that
Mhm.
kind of depth of soul, when I feel people that are living that way, which is available to all of us, obviously, it really is those that are connected, deeply to their bodies, the nature, outside of ourselves, their nature, their emotions, their creativity, the imagination, these things that make us inherently human. And so, I mean, it is almost, we are coming back to nature. That is the evolution. The evolution that is happening, yes or yes, and that will continue, yes or yes. It is taking us, back to our nature. We're so powerful. Like, we haven't the first clue of what that technology can really do. If we think we know, and we've got not the first clue yet, otherwise we'd be demonstrating it. And
Mhm.
we're not yet, but we're getting there. But there's just so much to explore, just within those things, like you said, the body, the emotional richness, our creative richness, and our connection to nature outside of us. Wouldn't you agree?
I mean, it's just something in my beginning of journey in my 40s of discovering how to begin to feel, I call it the juicy joy, because I can feel the difference of how this shift is, and to uh, truly cultivate it not only for myself but also in service, because I felt like my journey of service as a medicine woman when I was younger, it was still coming from overgiving and the
Mm,
self extraction,
mm,
and now the power of radiantly understanding that there's been so many other things out there that's been wanting to disrupt this joy, and how fearless and courageous it would be to still show up shining that light despite in range of energy in motion, that yes there is grief, yes there is rage, and yes there is juicy joy. In this overflow is enough to go around, and that sense of aliveness, I think that is the thirst that we're talking about, that
yeah.
aliveness when we
Mm,
can receive and be in communion with nature,
mm,
and in our inner nature meeting the outer nature and seeing how there's so much abundance, as simple as throwing seeds down to the fertile soil and it grows, right? This is what we are returning to, when if we allow ourselves to truly come back to this very vessel that we were here to occupy, to be with. And it's the complexity. And at the same time, I feel a little bit of this, the ambition of the human species of wanting to experience so many things. And it's all part of, all right, where do we want to place our attention to now?
mm, mm.
And I feel this is very rightful in this times of putting that into perspective. We are definitely not a victim of our circumstances. I think this is
Great.
what we're looking at in every aspect of our life, the roles that we play, and how do we choose the way of being, or the emotions that truly supports the upliftment of the sense of how do I want to give out my energy in the best way, what would be the way that I could be of service in this time. So this is something that has supported me to be back in this smart city Singapore, very different from the nature jungle that I was living in. Was, if I choose that thought, that point of view, that is going to make me suffer, why do I want to choose that suffering? Who am I trying to prove? What do I gain from perpetuating this self victimization again and again?
Mm. That's right. Yes, it is. We are ready to take radical responsibility, aren't we? It is high time. that each of us took more responsibility for the quality of life that we're experiencing, and recognize that it's all a choice the whole way through. It's really, it really is. We are, and that can confront, that does really confront um, a lot of mind and a lot of emotions when, and it can open up a very big picture conversation actually as to why do some people experience war, innocently, and others don't. Like it's a huge topic, around, our creative ability, our soul's choices to get particular lessons that we have decided to get, you know, in order to shape, our trajectory and our evolution. Like it's yes or yes, we are choosing. And yeah, I would just encourage everyone to, like this is the time for radical choices and change. Like everything is supporting that. Like this is the time to make major changes in our lives, away from ways of being, occupations, away from towns, away from expectations of society, like you so beautifully said earlier, that are holding back the potential for us to, yeah, just to have that juicy joy of soul radiance, which is why we're here. Like, it's why we're here. Like really, and like I'm looking out my window at urban Paris, on a very grey autumn day, and it's like it is so excitingly beautiful. Just looking out to that brick wall over there, and these leaves that some people could look at as dying, and it's like, no, this is like everything is so cool. And this is what is available to all of us. Should we, follow that calling inside that is going to lead you to the powerful life lessons that your soul requires, so we can enjoy so much more. And it does tend to take us to nature a lot of the time, wouldn't you say, Malika? Like these callings, these feelings, we do end up in forests, we do end up in deserts, we do end up climbing mountains, for part of that. Like it is nature herself, like reclaiming her children in a way. I see that for my own life, like growing up in, central Sydney, and not having anything like that with, in my upbringing, and then to just be like, oh, I've got to get to the mountains and I've got to climb them, and I'm going to keep climbing them, and I'm just going to fucking like to no mind about it, just like a driving to hear God, to hear Great Spirit, to hear God in those places. And yes, so many people I speak to at Mana, so many of our tribe and our studentship that come through also have this inside, there's this yearning, and we all have it, and it's time to listen to it, isn't it?
Mhm.
Like how would you, for people out there, Malika, who are, I don't know, feeling that, but potentially there's fear. I think that that's probably the main obstacle for people to honor what they're hearing. If the calling is get out of this relationship and go to the other side of the world, or it's like leave that job and paint canvases, or that voice, that is, or that calling, let's say, I do sense that fears are the main obstacle. What would you say to people who experience fear?
I think that's a really good question. I mean, there is
Mm, mm,
so many Instagram quotes are coming to me, but I'm like, let's answer this. Let's answer this. Like,
mm,
for me, fear
mm,
has become a guide. It's really seeing the perspective, or shifting or elevating our perspective of why there is fear in certain areas of our life. There is a reason why it's specifically there, and it's just growing the muscle to meet that threshold, right? There's points where it feels like oh, I'm a little bit outside of my comfort zone. How can I grow a little bit more of my own capacity to meet that fear?
Mm.
And at times, for some, it is easy to jump off the cliff, and for others, it might be something taking that little baby steps to move and meet the fear and realize that fear is, a friend,
Yeah.
something that we can kind of digest in a way, in a sense of like, I can embrace this fear because it is a part of me, and we live with this fear, and this fear is healthy for us to grow. It shows us where there is capacity to grow into. So those thresholds are which that excites me. It seems like I become really good at meeting these thresholds in my
Mhm.
initiation, and holding people to grow beyond of what they think is possible. So it is
Mm.
what I feel like the medicine women are midwifing a lot of our communities in this holding spaces, whether it's in the Temazcal or sweat lodge and ceremonies with the plant teachers, is holding that liminal spaces for the limitation, the illusion of the limitation to be unraveled, and realizing that we have infinite possibilities. And
Mm.
in order for the infinite to come through is the capacity to empty ourselves completely of what we think we are, and to offer that to the fire, to offer that to the very nature, the elemental primordial parents that we are made of, and be reborn again and again and again. And this are the times we're in. This is exactly the times that we're in. And what a beautiful opportunity that we have here right now to do it together, to,
Mm.
bring this intimacy with our fear, this pain that we might be feeling right now in these times, this despair that might come, this hopelessness. And in that one moment of choice that you talk about, radical decision of, I'm going to choose something today. Let today be that choice that makes a big, powerful difference in the trajectory of our lives, in a whole, yes, juicy joy, yes, that it is possible to feel this aliveness, so that we could also, as you mentioned, like, die in a dignified way. I think this is where there is so much fear, the fear of our own mortality. And this is where we run away from life because we haven't fully embraced our own mortality.
Agreed. Absolutely. And I love those reminders that say, like, die before you die. Die before you die. Die to everything. Then you can truly live. We can't truly live if we're completely frightened of the end of life, when we're not throwing ourselves in. It's a life half lived, or life even 20% lived, and that is tragic to me. Like, it's just, it's tragic. That I love that saying, don't die with your music still in you. Like, oh,
Mm,
that's a tragedy to me. Thinking of all these soul dreams and visions and major creatives everywhere who are sitting on their dream life and their expressions, not willing to come through that fear. And like you said, it's a integral part of it. Like, it's an integral part of the evolution process and the growth process to feel the fear. There it is. Okay, all right, let's go. I'm going to conquer that fear. I'm going to work
mhm,
through it. I'm going to work with it,
mhm.
rather than, oh, fear running the other way under the
Yeah.
doona, which
Mhm,
is what a lot of us, are doing, which is, yeah, a real shame. But, like, the whole thing really is like, it's coming back to our nature, because by nature we're courageous. Like, by nature, human
absolutely.
beings are so incredibly courageous. That's our nature. I think this society over millennia has dulled that to where we are just so malleable and so frightened and so easily moved around a chessboard. But in fact, we're like, no, no, actually, we've got such a fire and brave heart within us. Yeah, I do think that, nature can teach us that as well, like the rhythms of nature. um, the systems in nature do remind us that nature's brave. We are part of that. And I know that rhythms is a big part of your passion. The rhythmic mystic over here. Yeah, share with us a bit about that, as potentially a tool for that breaking away, that we're talking about, that coming back to our nature. How can the tool of rhythm support us?
I feel rhythm is life, it's like in this uh, journey of remembering who we truly are, as you mentioned, that nature is courageous. It's this evolutionary remembering of how we have evolved through the environments, the environments that we were in, and how that has created our journey of being where we are. And rhythms for me is something that has deepened my devotion in perceiving this beautiful dance of life. When at times we feel that we meet someone and we are vibrating or dancing the same dance, it feels as though we're in love, and it's so personal and so intimate, because the moment that we can authentically, honestly, and with true full transparency keep with our own rhythm and walk alongside the other in this beautiful dance together, is there's just such a symbiotic, harmonic way of existence. And there are times in which that we might speed up or really slow down, and sometimes that's when we might kind of give something up in order to be a part of something. And the current situation with modern society and technology in which we are heading towards is the exposure to fast data, and our desire to in some ways receive this dopamine hit, this constant stimulation, consuming our own humanity expression in a way. We're not realizing, wow, there's a person behind that screen, right? So that rhythm of what they've written, what 2.7 seconds of screen attention, is also starting to come into our relationship with our own personal growth, where we think that it has to happen so quickly in order to get the instant gratification. So we
Yes.
might not have the same longevity, discipline, devotion in order to see things through.
Mm.
And the rhythm of physically being asked in modern cities to move so fast,
Yes.
walk faster, chase after something, is a violent way to live,
Mm.
especially for women, where we need those moments of contemplation, where we need those moments of rest. So
Mm.
we as a species are awakening to the consequences of those inhumane rhythms during the production in the industrial civilization of producing and consuming. And now we're realizing, what would be the rhythm that starts to rejuvenate the the breakage of our own self-expression, whether that self-expression is with our own juicy joy or our lack of attention towards each other.
Mm. Oh, absolutely. It's I look at my son, who the attention span and the scrolling on the phone, and it frightens me. And I know that whenever I tell him what to do, it backfires. Like, my son is such a power, like, he's just not taking anything from anyone. And so I have learnt with, with the trial and error, the best strategies to guide him. And, that's just from gentle, unconditional love and just gentle guidance that he can take. Or he, if he doesn't want to, it's his path now. He's, a young adult. But I say to him, Zion, that powerful creative soul inside of you, that is going to be so successful in your life. And I see him, yep, puffing up when I say this. And I'm like, yeah, when you slam down on it every morning with all those other people's ideas and their lives and their words and their music and your own listening, that we've been talking about in this conversation is shut down. It's so much harder to hear and to find you and your path when we are taking in so
Mm.
much swiftly moving
It's so fast.
information. Wow, remember when we were teenagers? Do you know, like, how present and slow everything seemed to be? And I'm looking at their
Mm.
lives now, and it's like far out. And even as adults, like adults listening, can you see that how many of us have the patience to knit a scarf, to really read a big fat book, it's like the already you can feel the programming that impinges, like you were saying, Malika, on our ability to see the value of doing things slowly, like the
Mm.
value in it. It's like we've been conditioned to think, no, 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 things need to happen swiftly. That's the value. There's no value in slowness. And it's like, yeah, the rhythm it is wild, isn't it? And I can feel in myself, mid 40s, really definitely wanting to slow. And I don't mean in production, but I mean in the pace of it. Like and I feel like I'm being far more effective now that I am actually doing things with a lot more spaciousness and timing and, discernment, true,
Mm.
having the time to discern, like
Yes.
really truly discern. It's hard to listen to that wisdom of our inner discernment when we're moving so quickly, because
Mm.
these are languages that are spoken in the body, like they're picked up on those inner planes. And if we've got our eyes out and moving so swiftly, it's hard to hear all that. Do you think?
Absolutely.
Mm,
It is, it's as you say, like the next generation are made of these times, and at the same time, when we talk about the leadership and the guidance that is asked of us in these times, in order to bridge the such a vast and different generational zeitgeist or ethos, and how in one generation to the other generation there's just such an absolute different language.
mm,
And this has been something that I seem to be fascinated to do, because I understand that in these times of leadership is to be able to bridge those languages for the younger people and the older generation. And this
mm,
intergenerational conversation
mm,
is, you would say, a difference of rhythms, and I think that
mm,
is where we can reap the harvest of how each generation did what they could do with whatever that they had, and they got us where we are. And
mm,
then we do need to sit around the fire to have this kind of conversation of what truly worked, what didn't work, because I think this is where
mm,
humanity hasn't given the chance of the trials and tribulation of our elders. uh, is like the capacity for us to use it and bring it over to the next generation and bridge this conversation, because they each have something to give. And in this kind of the breaking away of this kind of hierarchical top down governance and power back to the people, i
mm.
don't I think it's only a matter of time that the power is coming back to the people. The power has always been with the people.
Totally.
But I think whether we are ready to really be in that space of leadership and power is another thing. I see it in communities, alternative communities, and how do we weave it back together? It's so easy to sit by and kind of critique certain leadership because it's binding countries, running system for bigger things, and
Mm,
then being able to observe that in alternative communities that sometimes work and sometimes doesn't work. So whether the younger generation which will go into leadership have those human social skills to move through differences,
mm,
conflict, and
mm, mm,
support this very human social skills, which along the way the technology in some ways is eroding our attention to be able to really give human value, that when there is sickness, when there is death, like the rites of passage that is needed to honor life, you being a mother and saying like what it took to raise a life. And when we scroll through people's expression, we begin to kind of diminish this reverence for someone else that's right in front of you, someone's daughter, someone's son, and that there's someone who brought that together. So these are the spaces in which that we can grow in leaderships. Like, yes, we want the power, we have the power. How do we come together in this unity? And I know that you do this in Mana movement.
Thank you. Yes, and it's a matter of like you brought up the word value, and it is a major reevaluation moment for us as individuals and obviously as a collective hugely, but in everyone I can feel this, this reevaluation. What am I placing value on? What is valuable in my life? Where am I lending too much of my focus and energy to things that I truly don't value anymore? And
Mm,
seeing the knock-on effects of that are we have these hungry souls, these souls so thirsty for that juicy joy you talk about. It is a matter of reevaluating. Okay, well, where are you putting your hours? Where are you
mm,
putting your incredibly sacred and valuable attention and focus and energy? Like, what are you focusing on? Well, then, okay, that's what you're going to get. That's your choice. Like, it is time for bravery. It really is. It's time for bravery and reevaluating these things as individuals, and the pointing of fingers outward. While we're not living fully radiant rockin' lives, we can't get away with it anymore. Like, it really is up to each of us to demonstrate, to like literally not to even just talk about, is to absolutely demonstrate, the change that we want to see in the world around us. I always say this, Malika, like what the world needs is happy people. What the world desperately needs is happy people, in lots of them, like showing everyone else how to be happy. Like, it's
yes.
really that simple. Like, it doesn't matter
Mm,
what you do, who you vote for, this or that. It's like, are you happy? Like,
mm,
really happy? Like, that's the key right there. Like, that's the ticket. And so,
mm,
I know that coming back to our nature is actually what makes us happy. Like, coming back to the truth of like who we are, not trying to pretend to be robots, or
mm,
be robots, automatically just like that's not who we are. It's not the human race. Ah, wild, isn't it? Yeah. So I mean, you're a woman that drinks in nature, as I feel as profoundly as I know I do. Like, just where the slightest thing occurring, in nature outside of yourself could fill you up for weeks and weeks, aren't you? I know you are. And and it's so nice to like, there's not a lot of us. And it's like, it's just like, we've got something really good going on here, that we
what?
can feel absolute head to toe ecstasy and bliss with just the slightest thing outside of ourselves, or within ourselves. And, and again, this is available to everyone. And I would love, us to talk about that for a little while and help inspire people that, like it is all right here, isn't it? Like with,
Mm,
I know you have a beautiful connection with birds. and
Mm,
with water, like tell
mm.
us more about your connection with nature and it's how much you love it, Malika.
Oh, I absolutely love it. And I am right there with you. We need more people just like orgasmically beaming radiance. And and the sound of laughter has been something that's been like, wow, this is powerful. Because when you enter a space where everybody's kind of in their own screen and
Mm,
you laugh out loud, like it breaks this kind of sleepiness. And there's like, they go into this state where it's almost that rhythm that breaks.
mm.
And then like everyone feels like, oh, we can also just be okay, be alive, so that I
Yes.
feel like the joy has been such a beautiful way for me to walk and beam. It's a daily devotion to cultivate this juicy joy,
Mm, mm.
and the capacity to, what I love about being in the tropics back here is the rain. Like
Yeah.
I just get a whole thing when I get caught in the rain. It's like the
The
whole
whole vibe right there. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
the whole theatrics of just, it's so beautiful. It really brings me back to my childhood and just being soaked. Just, it just fills me up. It rejuvenates me. It makes me feel really one with creator, the infinite source. We talk about where are we giving our power to, where are we actually receiving this beautiful flow of energy, and it is all around us. It's whether we're ready to devote, like this daily devotion of yeah, being worthy enough of this joy. I think the joy is actually really courageous, and it's very triggering to be this radiant. It is something that sometimes it's like, how dare you? And at times I walk on the streets, and it's like I feel like the richest woman in the city because I feel so soul level satisfied and fulfilled, because there was just nothing else that you can dangle any carrot, and I'm like, I'm already there. I'm there.
Your carrots. Who needs your riches? Who needs it? When we've got rain. Do you know, like when we've got rain, when we've got the birds in the park, when we've got those calls, when you've got the beauty of the flowers, when you walk past a florist, like just walking past a florist is like, like the amount of energy and color that I get smacked with. And you to tell you all those flowers singing at you, just the flowers are just all over, and it's like it's everywhere. Every tree on every block is singing to us, and we talk about this a lot in mana. It's pretty much one of the 10 keys, the key of flows. Well, there's a lot to it, but in that key we recognize the infinite flows of the universe that are trying to reach us, the communications, the gifts, the blessings, the love that literally like coming at us from all sides. But we're like this, blinkers on, walking down the street, life sucks. And it's like like that is on us. That is on us. If we're not experiencing tremendous joy, it is us that's blocking it, because it is everywhere. It's
Mm,
absolutely everywhere. And I'm reminded of what Liz, used to say it to us, like, the flowers, in the florist, the flowers in the vase on the table, like they're sending a communication to you. Like right now, are you receiving it? Are we actually receiving it? Or are we just looking at things like outside of us? So it's a 3D object. Oh, it's a pretty one. It's over there. Rather than like that's a living being that has a flow of communication. Yes, it doesn't flow in words like we do, but plants, everything is flowing to us. And this is, what you and I are drinking in and what, the wise ones are conscious of and are drinking in all the time. These are, the backbone of the teachings in the Andes, aren't they? Do you know, like this, the sacred reciprocity of Aini, that everything is flowing toward us and flowing out of us, and and yes, again, that is our nature. Like if you look at the energetic blueprint of a human being and that technology we're talking about, like that toroidal energetic flow, that things are coming in all the time. That's our nature. Our nature is to be drinking in and flowing out. And this is, what I'm so passionate for humans to come back to is themselves. I love your story there about the rain. I have one of my like highlight life memories that is just so clear, in my mind and in my heart, and I'll never forget it. I think I was about 20, gosh, maybe 20, probably 20, and at that time visiting the islands in Thailand a lot because I was living in Europe and then going back to Australia every however long. So I'd stop in Asia and head down to those islands and just swim and be with the stars, for weeks on end. And I can remember being on Koh Chang, which had very, very little infrastructure on it back then. And Koh Chang, for anyone who knows it, is named after the elephant because it's shaped like an elephant sleeping. It's quite a high, small island, but high and steep. And it was nighttime and there was a tropical storm. And so it's raining and it's windy, but it's warm, and there's electricity going, and so I'm in the water, naked in the water. I've swum out and I'm floating on my back, looking back at the island, and all the island is just this black lump, with the stars behind it, so this silhouette. And
Yes.
the little string of lights along the beach, the few lights of the few huts. And every now and then, because of the storm, they would flicker on and off and just go
Mm.
out completely. And there was just no light whatsoever, but this looming silhouette and this rain on my face and the sound of the storm and the electricity going. And I literally, even at 20, was just in that completely ecstatic state of synesthesia where every sense is blurred into the other. And you
Mm.
just receiving it felt like just literally the thumbprint of God, like directly onto your third eye, or directly like palm onto the heart. God just presses his palm onto your arm, goes, where everything just blurs and blends in the beauty. And
Mm.
this is our birthright, I feel, here, coming into this life of 52 senses is what my teacher, taught us. There's
Mm.
not six. There's far more senses
Wow.
that we have, and obviously the vast majority pertain to the metaphysical, like our energetic senses, like there's so much for us to explore just within ourselves. And we're all looking out into this sick society for fulfillment. This sick society. Oh, when it's like that's not where we're going to find it.
I am right now in the waters of Koh Chang, but like
I've left you there. Come back, girl. I'm there too. Let's go there.
it's I think this is the invitation is to shift this relationship, like as you mentioned in the Andes of the sacred reciprocity, from shifting from the consumer to this co-creation, like rather than seeing the flower, what can you give me, it's a whole different question. I think there's an invitation of how we're showing up in every moment as we relate, right? It's just this constant relationship shift from this extractive consuming way, and how can we understand that we're woven, we are a part of this. I call it the aesthetic rhythmic beingness, when we come into this devotional dance. And this is the spaces where I have encountered moments where I can't even make things up, so as you mentioned about the outside world that's already been created, the invitation is to see the in between, to really go inside and see what is seeding in the potential of the darkness of the void, and in those spaces of what potential is currently blooming in our soul, and the capacity to say, I'm going to midwife this, I'm going to commit to keeping it till it is ready to be birthed. And this has been such a profound remembrance for me with the whole connection with the water, and as well as the birds that you mentioned, of how we can expand our perspective
Mm.
from our very smallness, and sometimes we feel so small. How can we grow our perspective? And the birds have been a big part of humanity myth storytelling, and I've had encounters with birds when we tapped into this, as you mentioned in your story, that you get to feel God's presence. And this returning home for me has been the being witnessed by the birds. One specific moment that just will stay with me, like how it stays with you, this moment for the rest of my life. Of as you mentioned, we didn't have such clear indication of our assignment with the ancestry, and
Yeah.
coming from mixed heritage, and the consistently feeling an outsider of anything. And I understood that even more, that it is important as part of birthing a new vision to walk the fringes, to see the outside, so that we can also speak about what's innovative, or what it is, the imagination that comes through. So I always felt like when I sit around such strong ancestry, whether we sit with in the Andes and all the different indigenous tradition, it's so beautiful to see the clear lines. And I didn't have that. I used to go into a lot of doubt of, why me? Where did this come from? How? And this beautiful testimony of this bird, which is specifically the hornbill, is an important motive or bird totem for the Dayak people in Borneo, in Indonesia. And this has been a part of reclamation of my own ancestry in this homecoming. And this beautiful Sunday afternoon, while I was walking by the beach, it was just such a clear clarity of this clairvoyance, or communication interspecies, which is nothing supernatural. It is actually very ultra natural for us
Mm.
in our humanness, or human nature, to communicate with our brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
And so in that state, I spoke to the hornbill, this hornbill that was perched by the side of the beach, and I asked, like, would you like to give me a feather? It was just so beautiful to feel this openness, right? I wouldn't ask if I didn't feel that this was probably possible.
Mm.
And it was something that, oh my goodness, I will never forget how clear it was. And it will always be clear within my soul remembrance of seeing this bird flying to the branch on the tree right on top of me, and plucked its feather and dropped it in my hand. And it was one of those moments where, it
Mm.
just takes your breath away, and realize how effortless it can be when we're in the right vibration and resonance to our true nature. And that moment changed my life in terms of who or what I am. It was like, we see you as we are all in our humanity, coming back to see the natural world as part of us. I think there's that smallness sometimes, that we're so afraid to receive this much beauty. I hear this all the time. It's like, Malika, there's so much. You're so much. It is like, it's exactly who we are. We are all of it, and it's infinite, and it's abundant. It is a lot of times our own construct, the thinking that we need to limit our receptivity, that we can receive from life, that we are a part of life. And this is why the waters are coming to share us this beautiful message of what it is to be connected to the very creation of life. You know, it's being cleansed, and the birds, everything, every single thing in this beautiful tapestry has a function, and it's a matter of how we want to place the perspective of the role that we want to see life. How are we really showing up? And if we're in radical honesty and responsibility, it is a whole different trajectory that we are projecting into our life and what we're living.
Yes, that's right. And that brings us back to that radical honesty with ourselves, and it is brave. Do you know, there's so many brave changes I can be making, you know, like so many. Like, it's very inspiring what you just said. Do you know, like it really hits in to even more shifting and even more honoring of nature and the functions therein of all the brothers and sisters that we live with on earth. Like, it's, yeah, it's it's humbling stuff. Yeah, it's really humbling
Yes.
stuff. Yeah, you mentioned in there the waters, and that just reminded me of, you know, Croatia and then Zora, and then straight over to Sand Talk. You know, that incredible book by Tyson Yunkaporta. If you haven't read that, anyone listening, grab a copy of Sand Talk. It's the most incredible book by an Indigenous Australian. I guess I know he's a professor somewhere, but you know, a philosopher, a lawman, and he presents very, very humbly, doesn't he? So humble, gosh, to see almost to self-deprecation. You know, he's very humble, and that book is so incredibly inspiring and inspired. You know, our trip to Croatia next June, the Zora Women's Sailing Conference, which, you know, these topics we're discussing here are the topics that we'll be sharing and singing into, drumming into, creating solstice ceremony around, you know, next June. And Malika is one of the guest facilitators at that beautiful event. And yeah, that book is really what inspired it for me in my heart. I was like, the women, we've got to talk about this. We've got to like brainstorm. We've got to sit around a round table and see what happens when we come together and open this up. Yeah, that book really made an impression on you, didn't it?
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that with me. In
Mm.
I feel like that humility, or the tone in which that was written, was in some ways quite refreshing for me, because I feel at times when I'm being invited to speak to such topics, it's it comes with a lot of predicament in a modern weaving, right? The weaving to talk about the indigenous soul within a smart city in Singapore, and how does that look like? It takes a profound humbling experience, and at the same time weaving that intentionally. So what he's gifted me was probably the language to start to write something that is telling the story, or very specifically what it is to honor this within the geographical storytelling or myth that I was born into, and at the same time was able to experience and expose to feel a part of so many more cosmovision or traditions, and what it is to hold reverence in the crossroad of modern times and the future technology that we are currently interfacing with. So I'm grateful for the framework that gives me to the opportunity to organize that. And I feel like this profoundness in the way that he humbly present what we have ahead of us is something, going back to the conversation that we have on the round table of the women, to deeply humble ourselves of this journey of leadership together, shared leadership, um, in humbling how what is it going to take to midwife or seed something that in within our lifetime we might not be able to receive. We have a responsibility to the next generation to carry it, to bloom and harvest what's what's been passed on to us. So he expressed that in a very humble way, at least for me to understand. It's like, well, there's such so many intricate pieces to this storytelling, a community building, at least for me, right? Like there's that challenge of how do we sustain community building. And I think this is where the role of the medicine woman holds in terms of holding ceremony for the community and having the capacity to speak to different areas of the leadership, and how do we
Mm,
inspire the intersectionality of topics,
mm,
because that's almost the initiation, right? We can stay and master one area. It's almost like the four wheels of a car, right? We're being called to grow in different muscles to be able to walk with longevity in our friendship, in our commitment, in our projects, and see through in the best way that we can. So that was what he presented. And I feel Zora, and your beautiful prayer and calling in with what Zora represent for women as a sailing conference is just the purity of seeing this clear water that is going to sustain us in this powerful time of the June solstice,
mm,
and anchoring a beautiful vision for our lives as well as the lives of our community, and what that looks like from the transmission of this crystal blue water. I feel this is going to be something absolutely healing,
mm,
something that is so I wouldn't say needed. It is such a privilege to be a part of it with so
mm,
much reverence.
mm,
And whoever, women sisters who, if you're listening to this, it would be such a gift to have you
mm,
a part of this beautiful experience, and intentionally make a memory that you will never ever forget. Is one of those things, right? Like me and you were taking you to spaces and things that will stay in your soul
mm,
forever. And I
mm.
think this is what we are committed to bring and birth to the community through the experience of Zora and other teachers that are going to come on board. Oh my goodness, it would be just absolutely juicy joy overload. Come on.
Juicy joy. And I am so excited to feel your voice when we are on that water. For anyone who has not experienced Malika's voice, that it's just one of the most powerful kuyas in your mesa is your voice, your tool of it's something else. It really, I don't know a voice like it. There isn't a voice even remotely like yours, and the portals that you open and the otherworldliness of the tone that is the just doorways, cosmic doorways that you open with your voice. And oh gosh, we are going to be in for a treat to be with your voice at solstice time, and exploring these topics together as medicine women from all around the world, to think tank, or I call it heart tank, to heart tank these topics, and how we can best guide our communities and humanity and support each other. And I would love, just before we finish off today, Malika, for you to share with the people about your program, the Healing Drum, and what it is, like what actually is it, where they can find it, and how long the program goes for, and what do you do in the program, and what can people expect to get out of it.
So the healing drum is it's a project, as I mentioned, that was birthed with the inspiration of the prayer of a standing rock. Ever since I received this
Mm,
buffalo drum, it was just something that moved me to honor the water prayer. So it was very deeply connected to water.
mm,
It's about birthing the voice and remembering the rhythm. So that is what the healing drum represents. And the way that I hold space recently has been one on one. It's just such a beautiful way, intimate, profound way to be midwife to the next chapter of our lives. And I've discovered such a profound depth and truth and intimacy working with people in programs such as, I have a rooted mentorship. This is especially for the up and coming new medicine women sisters who are looking for that accompaniment to really give strong foundation in the way that they lead, knowing that they are going to stick around, that this is the path that they choose and have chosen them. So this mentorship is 6 months, and I really like the long, slow, deep containers where we really see where you stand in your medicine wheel. Like you say, your mesa and the shadows, and really knowing intimately our shadows when we facilitate to bring the integrity to hold that space of reverence in our prayer. And how do we rejuvenate ourselves in those spaces of leadership and in facilitation. So that's highly recommended for those who are wanting to feel that sense of rootedness. Accompaniment in the medicine path, rooted mentorship is for that. I teach vocal alchemy. This is the sound healers out there who want to really soar with your voice. We have all this beautiful, singing bowls and the gongs, and they are all amazing. And at the same time, your voice is a powerful tool. I see that again and again and again. The moment that you realize that you don't need to hide behind your instruments, you can just show up and realize that the sound healing is you and your voice. That vulnerability, the capacity that you show up changes, and it's so powerful, the shift that can happen in those spaces. So that is vocal alchemy, and that's deeply grounded in the medicine of Anka, which is the eagle and the buffalo. It is the capacity to open up your perspective and the groundedness of the buffalo to move through. So that's the vocal alchemy. I
Beautiful.
also support those who have gone through such powerful transformation with plant teachers, and is seeking some integration process. I've created
Beautiful.
a program just for this, for us to support you in your journey back into integration into the environment that you came from, because at times it is that is where the real work happens, where we can integrate the big shift, the big revelation with the right tools so that the change can continue. It's not about taking more medicine, more serum. It's like, how do I bring the profoundness of every drop of that medicine and have that integrity and the integration process to ground me in my life? And so these are the three main programs that I'm currently running
Beautiful.
online, and I'm excited to do more retreats, whether that's coming to wherever that is, maybe going to Australia to do something. It'll be amazing to share this for the mana community. I think there's just so much synergy and possibility, but this has been such a gift. Thank you, Chrissy, for like with the right presence, and it's just all the wisdom flows in such mastery when the space is created, and you do this so beautifully and so well. And that's why with you it's always an absolute juicy joy. Yes.
Darling thing. Oh, Malika, thank you. That all that wonderful information. How inspiring! I know a lot of people listening. I know a lot of the mana mamas listening are would fit perfectly into, those trainings. That we've got a lot of women, doing sound work and using their voice and wanting to develop that. So anyone listening, like, just lean in. The links to reach Malika are underneath this podcast. And yeah, just keep in touch with her. And if anyone is interested to join us both with other amazing facilitators in Croatia on the Adriatic next June 20 to 30, registrations are open now, to jump on one of the catamarans with us and sail and seek solutions together, And so, yes, thank you once again, Malika, for being here. Malika Avani, the rhythmic mystic. You are such a treasure to earth, sister. I fully honor your walk and your humility. And thank you for sharing your wisdom with us today and with the Mana community.
It's so good to be here. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.